What is up, insiders? You've got Harrison here, Whatley here. Actionable Insights is
Yo, yo,
back in the
yo.
house for the March 21 Price List Update Summary. There was an unprecedented change to the Xactimate price list this month. So, Whatley, we have a lot to talk about. I am excited. The latter half of this video, there is a lot of meat and potatoes, big changes, and a lot to discuss. I think this is some of our best work. We have prepared a ton for this, so I'm excited to dive into it. For those of you that don't know us, Actionable Insights, the best way to watch this video is at getinsights.org, where in the video gallery, we have the price list update summary, and we have all of these line items and things that we'll talk about hyperlinked, so you can quickly jump to that section in the video. So with that, Wally, let's jump right into it because we got a lot to talk about. Let's take a look at the 6 new line items in the March edition of the price list, of the Xactimate price list. And first one here at the top we have is the power distribution box per week. Now, we typically had a WTR POW-D line item for a power distribution box, which we'll talk about in the line item changes in a moment. But there is this new weekly power distribution box. What do you think about this addition, this change, et cetera?
Yeah, I think it's a fairly familiar pattern. Most of the equipment that is used on a regular basis in a mitigation environment has a weekly rate as opposed to a daily rate. And some of those line items actually have a monthly rate as well. So I think this is a great addition to the price list, especially because these spider boxes, unlike DHUs, are deployed for long durations of time. So when you've got a fire, let's say, and then you bring an electrician to pull temporary power off the panel, and you're working in concert with your local utilities, you're going to deploy that spider box for potentially months, right? Or at least weeks. So it's different than a DHU that way. So I think it's a totally necessary and welcome addition to the price list.
I like it. Roofing felt 30-pound, double coverage, low scope. So when you look for double coverage related roofing felt in the price list, we had an existing 15-pound double coverage, low scope line item. Now they have added a 30-pound double coverage, low slope line item. That's a good addition to have.
Yeah, that's right. And if I'm a inspector for a carrier or TPA, I don't want to see the double felt. Like, I don't want to see normal 30-pound felt listed twice, right? Because that's going to draw eyes. And as so many of these sheets are getting audited in an automated way anyways, that's going to throw a likely alert or violation. So this is a line item that can be used to, arrive at a reasonable and customary amount, but not draw, outsized attention. But I'd rather see my contractors using this line item because it doesn't pay as much as double felt, nor should it, right? Because there's some additional efficiencies there as it relates to labor that are realized. But yeah, I think that's going to be a helpful line item.
All right, continuing on with the nurse call station, we've seen more and more commercial related line items added to the Xactimate price list in recent months. We saw some nurse call station line items recently, but here's another with a remote repeater wireless. So if you're doing commercial works with these nurse call stations, here's that line item. And lastly, our favorite section, the cleaning section. Every month we get some new cleaning line items. This month it is bicycles. Last month we had fishing poles. So if you are coming across a dirty bike, you could be sure to clean it in Xactimate with these line items here.
Yeah, this also relates to like what Mike Fulton discussed this week on the State of the Industry RIA conference, which is a great recording if you guys can catch it, with Phil Rosebrook. Is in there dropping some insight about all the M&A that's taking place and the opportunities associated with potentially liquidating your business. If you're a restorer, the multiples are unprecedented, maybe a good time. So he does a great job of breaking down all the transactions over the last 3 years. I learned a bunch from Phil's section. I also learned a bunch from Mike's section, but Mike Fulton, the
president of Xactware.
Yeah, the president of Xactware. He was showing like where they're going with Contents Track. And, previously Kelly's team's done a great job. Kelly and Aaron, some incredible work in 2019, 2020 to do the object recognition. So it can see a toaster one at a time. And then it can tell you like what that line item is and pre-populate that in Contents Track. So pretty advanced object recognition. But what they're going to introduce later this year, Mike was alluding to, was you're going to be able to scan like in real time, and there will be multiple objects it will be able to identify at the same time. And so if you connect the dots to what the pricing team is doing towards having all these individual line items for contents, right? Because from an object recognition perspective, it's probably easier to tackle contents than it is building components.
Yep.
So you would tackle this problem first. And so Mike alluded to that, and he showed some images of that. And so I think that those two things will link up this year in a meaningful way. So I'm interested to see how that technology comes together. Race with the machines, baby.
I like it. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a great connection between all these cleaning line items we're seeing and the things that Xactimate and Xactware are working on. Let us now jump to the changes. There were 3 changes to existing line items from February to March. We have here on the left side a February 21 price list, on the right side March 21st, March 21 price list update. We'll take a look at the line item changes here. So water heater detach after hours. There were 2 new line items that came out last month related to water heater detach, just the normal detach and the after hours detach. And one of the things that we looked at in the last video and Xact looked at was the direct yields of these. Typically between a normal, like a labor component line item, a labor line item. When you go from a normal hour situation to an after hour situation, you see a decrease or a decrease in the direct yield of 33%, which typically results in a 50% increase in the unit price, which is in line with after hours payment rates, 1.5 times for after hours. That didn't quite align in this particular February 21, but Xact caught it and has updated the detach after hours line item here to be a 33% decrease in direct yield from the normal hour situation to the after hours situation here. So always nice to see Xact doesn't just put something out there and it is what it is. If there's a change that needs to be made or a change that needs to be addressed, they're jumping on it and we got the change within a month. So that's always a good sign. Additional item info changes you'll see here in the Xact price list from the e-service center. They modified it, the temporary manufactured log home line item to clarify that rough and finish electrical, plumbing, and HVAC is not included in the log home kit pricing, which can see when you click the some information here on these line items, you can see excludes has been oh, I gotta select the right line item over here. The exclude section has been updated to kind of reflect what is and what isn't included. So when these line items are being used and it's not clear what's included and what's excluded, you see a lot of tension and friction between contractors and adjusters just trying to settle a claim. So we always like it when things are clarified as to what's included, what's not included, so that people can be invoicing appropriately for what needs to be included in that particular loss. Lastly, this is the existing power distribution box. You'll note the per day now in the line item description field. So we now have a per week line item and a per day line item. Any thoughts on those 2 changes there?
No, I'd be interested to see in the comments down below where staff adjusters or restorers feel it's appropriate to jump to the per day. Is it at 5 days? Is it at 6 days? Would you just keep billing the per day rate for 10 plus days because it pays more? Where is the cutoff where one would jump to the per week? Is it straightforward and it's 6 days? What would you guys do? So I'd love to see some comments down below about what you guys think is fair and reasonable.
That is completely fair. We like those interactions. They always help. All right. Now for the big stuff. Well, I'm going to bring this March 21 back over here and bring up my Xactimate price list or for the e-service center link here. Because we had one of the biggest changes to the Xactimate price list we've ever seen. And I'm going to read through this here with you guys and we'll kind of walk through what this means.
Do it like an auctioneer.
Oh, no, that's too fast.
Okay.
The description of subject to labor support for the restoration service model labor efficiency averages of yeah, no, not going to do that. The descriptions and assumptions in the labor supporting events for restoration service remodel labor efficiencies have been adjusted from 30 minutes to 60 minutes of drive time and material equipment pickup. Boom.
Yeah.
Every line item normally included in efficiencies for 30 minutes of drive time, material equipment and pickup, and every line item has been moved to 60 minutes. Let's continue. This adjustment to the supporting event time assumption is based on a recent focus survey conducted with a large group of contractors in multiple states and provinces. The impact this has on the unit prices and hourly labor rates will vary based on feedback and on recent random samples with contractors for labor and line item pricing. For example, in some trades where it is more common for contractors to quote unit pricing over an hourly labor rate. It may be that the currently hourly labor rate was adjusted so that the unit prices stayed constant. Now, that's a lot of words in a written wall of text. Let's take a look at what that actually means here.
That could be interpreted a number of different ways, right?
Yes, and we saw some posts on Exact Ninjas, our Facebook group around Xactimate, when this March price list first came out, with some reactions as to what does all this mean? I see negative, I see down. What does this mean? So let's take a look here. I've got some labor trades for February. I've got some labor trades for March. And what I really just want to start with here is taking a look at the supporting events. I'm clicking the line item. I'm going to the unit price. I'm hitting I. I'm on the labor component for this line item. I'm going to hit edit so I can take a look at the, I got to go to actually one of these line items down here, dry LF. So we can take at the labor component, take a look at the supporting events, and I'm actually going to select both these boxes and edit them for a moment so that we can see them more visibly and kind of compare the two. So you'll see, let's actually make it a little bit bigger so you can see the 30-minute drive time there. And we'll do the same change here, because these are big boxes and we want to be able to see these changes pretty efficiently. So let's put these two boxes next to each other and take a look at what this means here. On the left side, we have the February supported events. For the appliance category, it was 21.75% inefficiencies. Cabinetry, 33.33, demolition, 33, drywall, 35.417. And where this supporting events comes in is down here. We talk in our Xactimate training classes, Xactimate estimating digital assets, a lot about yield, the difference between direct yield and productivity, how much of that particular activity somebody can do in an hour, or et cetera. And ultimately you have a final yield, which is based on the inefficiencies of restoration, the chaos of our environments that we work in. So the more inefficient something becomes, the more expensive it becomes. We've talked about that inverse relationship between yield and price. So looking at the March edition here, we'll go to the same exact categories here. Appliance went from 21 to 28% inefficiency. Cabinetry went from 33 to 39. Drywall we were looking at went from 35 to 42. So every single line item got changed from 30 minutes drive time assumption to 60-minute drive time. And as a result, all of the supporting events, the inefficiencies went up. And generally when inefficiencies goes up, that means pricing goes up. But what some people saw when they first logged in, and this is why I will take us to this G sheet that I prepared for this right here. There are currently 38 labor trade codes in the Xactimate price list. And I put in all of the trade codes for February, all the trade codes for March, and I kind of analyzed the differences to see what went up and what went down. And you'll note at a high level, 17 labor trades went up, 18 went down, and 3 didn't have a change. There was a really important statement in this document right here. The impact this has on unit prices and hourly labor rates will vary. For example, in some trades where it is more common for contractors to quote unit pricing over an hourly labor rate, it may be that the labor rate was adjusted down so that the unit prices stayed constant. And what you'll see here is, drywall, fencing, flooring, insulation, masonry, these categories, these labor trade codes highlighted in blue here, had some significant changes down. And what a lot of people saw when they fired up their March 21 price list for the first time is that they're looking at labor rates and they go, my business didn't get cheaper to run. I don't pay my guys less this month than I did last month. Like, how could labor rates go down? So that's when we started to look at the actual activities from the February to March 21 edition. To take a look at some of the labor rates here, I've got 6 examples. Drywall, this is the San Diego price list. Drywall went from 118 to 106. Painting, 86 to 79. Roofing, 180 to 165. And looking at the G sheet we have prepared here, those 3 categories, dry, painting, and roofing, are part of these categories that went down. Now, here's the key. When you look at 3 examples of those line items in action, dry LF, painting with 2 coats, RFG 300, these are 3 of the most common line items out there. Drywall, the unit price didn't actually change. It stayed at 1155 in this price list. So even though the labor rate went down from 118 to 106, the actual unit price of a line item that uses that labor trade code did not change. So when inefficiencies go up, what Xact is saying is that some of the times when we're asking drywallers or painters or roofers, they're giving us a unit price per square. They're giving a unit price per linear foot. They're not giving us I'm a roofer, I work at, $500 an hour, or $800 an hour. They're going, yeah, it's, $300 a square. Like that's the kind of feedback that they're getting.
Yeah, could I add that
Please.
you can see the bias of the prices department. Their interest are getting the unit prices accurate as possible. Their bias isn't getting the individual trade labor rates as accurate as possible. This would, if you were just running a T&M program, your job would be so much easier because you would just focus on how can I dial in the labor rates in my 470 different regions, let's say, if you're going to push that out to the same areas that the pricing department does. Understand, guys, the pricing department is running 470 price lists all over the globe right now. That's a heck of an undertaking. But their strong bias is getting the unit price right. And that comes sometimes at the exclusion of accuracy associated with the individual labor rate per hour. What Harrison was saying is if you ask a roofer today in San Diego to work for you per hour, they're typically going to stay, well, our rates are, under $100 an hour, but you can see here the labor rates coming through at $180 a month in February and then down to $165 in March. Why? Because roofers work by square. That's really how they quote it out. And so what the pricing department's doing is it's ensuring accuracy of the unit price by square by adjusting the labor rates in ways that serve and preserve that exclusive interest at exclusion of maybe acute accuracy for labor rates. Why? Because this industry doesn't really bill roofers traditionally T&M. I've never seen an invoice, Harrison, that's like, hey, we had 75 hours of roofing time and here's our material. Like it's really rare that you build T&M, at least in residential for a roof, you bill for per unit. So they're just responding to the realities of our business. And I think it makes it easier to settle claims by using per unit pricing, because the never-ending debate was, well, why is it 65 hours of roofers versus 40 hours of roofers versus 120 hour would be warranted? No one really has an acute answer to that. So you see the biases coming through with these changes to try to make sure the unit prices remain accurate. Hopefully that's clear for everybody. You think that?
I think so. I want to continue to add here. I wanted to highlight kind of the labor rates that went down based on that sentence in this G sheet here of what are the trades that are typically quoted per unit price and not per labor hour rate. Now let's take a look real quick at 3 other examples. ELE labor didn't change. There was no change in the hourly labor rate. How is that reflected in these line items? We talked about drive time went from 30 to 60 minutes, inefficiencies went up. So as a result, the labor trade code didn't change. The unit price in February for this outlet or switch detach and reset line item was $17.22. As a result of the change from 30 minutes to 60 minutes drive times, that line item is now $18.71. Nothing else has changed in that line item except for the supporting events related to the inefficiencies of additional drive time. Concrete grinding, similar, didn't change the labor trade code. You can see 110. And the unit price for this concrete grinding line item that we often talk about in training, $268 up to $291. CCAP, another covered plumbing activities insight sheet. CCAP is a very common line item we talk about in our training.
Mm-hmm.
The trade code actually went up slightly, 20 something odd cents. Okay. And with the inefficiencies as well, the line item price went from $22.75 to $24.73. Mm-hmm. So good to talk about kind of what that sentence means and how it reflected in the price list. Let us now kind of go a little bit deeper on some of these changes here that I want to talk about. One of the questions that we had when preparing for this video, for this price list update summary, was kind of like, okay, trades went up, trade codes went down. Let's kind of take a look at the overall, how did this affect the price list? And this led us to the basket of goods, labor, and materials report. And for those that have not kind of looked at the exact analysis reports, this is an exact analysis report. You can find it online. I found this basket of good labors and materials. This is an example of the line items that are contemplated in this report, kind of checking overall pricing up and down on these related line items here. And what we found in February to March, the change from here to here was actually a 5.18% increase. Like overall, the pricing based on this 30 to 60 minute drive time, the pricing of these line items tracked in the labor and material report went up 5.18%. Typically, from month to month, we see less than a 1% increase in that basket of goods report. So that is
a 1% change. I mean, sometimes it goes down, but it's
yes,
typically less than 1% up or down.
Yeah. So that's crazy. Like, this is why we talk about an unprecedented change in the exact price list. To move from a 30-minute drive time inefficiency to a 60-minute drive time inefficiency increased overall Xactimate price list, and especially in this basket of goods, by 5.18%. What some people saw, and we see a lot of in Exact Ninja, is when people don't know how to invoice for something or estimate for something, they may add labor hours. Well, if you are adding the labor hours for these particular trades that are typically invoiced for via unit price, you may be at a little bit of a disadvantage. So this is part of why in our Xactimate training classes, we talk about using the Xactimate line items that exist, trying to stay away from bid items and additional labor hours. Whenever you invite labor hours into the conversation, everybody gets feelings, because a contractor can feel like it's 40 hours and an adjuster can feel like it's 20 hours. And everybody it's hard to come to an agreement sometimes as to what that activity actually took hours wise. So this is why we encourage people to use the actual line items that have multiple components to be adjusting yields to accommodate the situation at hand, and et cetera. So I also brought up this to really dive into the numbers here. The ELE-OSRS line item, we talked about, this was a labor trade that did not change. It stayed the same. The unit price in February, the unit price in March. The supporting events in February were 21% inefficiencies. Supporting events in March was 28% inefficiencies. That added about 6% inefficiency, which is a 29% change in inefficiency. So a 29% increase in inefficiencies based on the 30 to 60 minute drive time resulted in a 8.65% increase in the overall price of the line item. So that is you want to know numbers as to how does a 30 to 60 minute drive time change affect my pricing and my line items. This one went up by 8.65% just by getting an additional 30 minutes of drive time.
And that's a line item that a lot of our private training clients use a lot, because it comes up, folks, when you're doing DRY, LF, and you're replacing the drywall from a flood cut. If those outlets are involved and they're installed in a retrofit way where the bunny ears of the top and the bottom of the outlet need to come over the drywall, which is as common as not, then it's warranted to count your outlets and apply that detach and reset line item for all the outlets in the relative room.
Absolutely. The last thing I want to highlight here is, as part of the prep for this, we wanted to take existing estimates of ours. So I took a mitigation estimate and I took a repair estimate that we've worked on in the past, and I added the February 21 price list and the March 21 price list. And you can see for the mitigation column here, the mitigation estimate, just by adding the new price list, went up about 3.24%. based on this 30 to 60 minute drive times change. Repair side for this particular example went up 2.15% just by putting in the new March 21 price list. So this is a significant change. Like, this is one of the larger changes I've seen to the price list in a long time. I think this is absolutely a step in the right direction. You and I travel around the country, and we talk to contractors everywhere. 30 minutes historically has not been enough.
What Harrison's saying is I normally take that supporting event section when we do our private training engagements. It's been tough to be up there on stage and try to explain to a couple hundred restorers why 30 minutes of drive time and picking up materials and or equipment per day is reasonable. That I never had a great answer to that. So 60 minutes is a great step in the right direction, because you can look at that quantitatively and that just doesn't gut check for anybody, whether you're a staff adjuster or whether you're a contractor. 30 minutes just didn't make a ton of sense. So this now reconciles with reality, but of course they had to make other adjustments, because what's important to remember, guys, is the unit prices weren't off by they weren't off like by 16%, right? They
No.
weren't. So if you made this adjustment to supporting events, what needed to happen, because our industry's changed and evolved, that 30 mins was probably true in Orem, Utah in 1993. It's just not true anymore, right? There's more traffic and
Urbanization, sprawling
urbanization,
cities,
sprawl,
like
all that.
bigger.
You got it. And so they had to make this change. But in order to do so and keep things accurate, because presumably they were already pretty accurate, they had to adjust other levers. And that's what you see going on with the labor trade code. So I encourage all you guys, this is a good example for you ninjas out there. Like, just be cautious in looking at one part of the equation when Exact makes a change to their price list. You can often misinterpret something and you would do that at the exclusion of having an understanding of how to actually arbitrage that change. So there are always a number of different dynamics in play when there's an adjustment. It's really rarely straightforward, and hats off to the actionable staff for putting in the time to put that together. That was a lot of work.
Yeah, but important work. I mean, that was a big change. There were a lot of questions about it. We wanted to get this video right so that you guys kind of understood that what this change looks like, what it means, how to understand it, and how to apply it in your estimates and invoices moving forward. So all great work. Thank you, Whatley. Well said there towards the end of making sure to look at the whole big picture. This is a great change in moving forward. Coming up in the April price list, they always give us, Exact gives us a little preview of what's coming. We've got items for hydronic solar panels, additional items for interior doors, and additional items to remove tile, cement, backerboard. So as always, we're here once a month. We will be back in April when it comes to the next price list that's released, and we'll have some exciting analysis and context and perspective for you there. In the meantime, check out Actionable Insights at getinsights.org. That's the best place to watch this video, and you can find all of our estimating resources as well as our training related to our resources and Matterport and other things. So Whatley, thanks again for joining me on the March version of the Price List Update Summary, and I will see you next month.
Thank you, and well done.